Hello everyone, welcome to another day where I have to talk about another completely avoidable tragedy that has happened on our great British Isles. This video is not the video to go through the details of this great tragedy. The main things that you need to know are that a terrorist who killed two men outside of a synagogue on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar is believed to be a British citizen of Syrian descent. Greater Manchester Police have named the suspect as Jihad al-Shami, which, according to people on Twitter, roughly translates to jihadi from Syria, which I don't think you could get more on the nose on. A 35-year-old who is understood to have entered the UK as a young child, and he was granted British citizenship in 2006. Three people, two men in their 30s and a woman in their 60s, have been arrested on suspicion of the commission, preparation and instigation of an act of terrorism. And along with this, I believe two other people are currently in hospital with stab wounds or blunt force trauma from the car he rammed into the synagogue. One thing I do have to say is that armed police were on the scene within 7 minutes of a phone call to the police. That is ridiculously good, and a rapid response that very likely saved lives. So commendations for the police there. However, what I'm mainly going after in this video is the political reaction from our political leaders, along with the fact that there have been some of the most ridiculous protests in a reaction to something like this that you could imagine, but we are entirely unsurprised by. Generally, the reaction from political right-wingers was in the vein of this Nigel Farage tweet: "I'm horrified by the attack at the synagogue in Manchester today, particularly on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. My thoughts and prayers are with the families of those affected and the Jewish community who will be suffering at this time, and my thanks go to the emergency services." Short, simple, gets the point, entirely agreeable. And in the interest of fairness, we will also go to the Conservative leader. "The murders in Manchester shock us all. Jews murdered simply for being Jews. This should not be the UK in 2025, but it is. It shouldn't be the UK ever, really. I mean, I know it was, but yes, it certainly should not be the case that people are being murdered at all. On Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement, Jews take time for introspection to ask themselves where have we gone wrong in the past and what do we need to do better in the future. These are questions we urgently need to ask ourselves as a nation, and today's murders raise new questions, and they will require new answers." Bit more detail and things that, again, I completely agree with. People who could be a bit more outspoken, like presenter Patrick Christie's on GB News, were a bit more blunt about the whole thing. "We've bent over backwards for the Muslim community, but we've let the Jews down." Absolutely, this is obviously in reaction to the synagogue attack. Labour reaction to reports of Muslims receiving more hate crime led to mosques having more security provided for by the state. Did Jews get that ever since 2023 in October? We had what Suella Braverman called hate marches in the streets, which I don't think was a completely inaccurate description. Lead to any state protection of Jews? No, not particularly. And obviously it was Tories in charge at that time then. Sunak just went to the main synagogue in London to say, effectively, the UK will stand by its ally in Israel, when they got attacked on October 7th. And we have one of the most inevitable outcomes that you could see. Pretty much everyone on GB News was saying something like this could happen. A lot of people on the alternative media were saying things like this could happen, because pretty much everyone knows when people say Zionists and when they're saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, it means the complete destruction of Israel, obviously the homeland for Jewish people, and by extension it typically seemed to mean the Jewish people in general, to the point that there were an awful lot of people constantly saying on Twitter, "I don't even go to London on Saturdays because I just don't feel safe." Was anything done about it? No. And now two people are dead and two more are in hospital simply because, well, nothing seems to be done to protect them, or the British people in general, I might add. But the Palestine-Israel conflict has really flared tensions. That much has been clear for some time. Because, shockingly, especially post-Blair when mass migration accelerated, just because someone comes over here and just because they end up getting a British passport, that is not a sign that they have integrated. If only there was a warning about something like this from 1968, where integration was a real phenomenon in that speech. However, it was made clear that not everyone succeeds in said phenomenon, and this is just a result of it. Anyway, our beloved Prime Minister made a small speech on the matter, making the point that anti-Semitism is rising. Yes, lots of us noticed that 2 years ago.
Good evening. Earlier today, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day for the Jewish community, a vile individual committed a terrorist attack.
I mean, I'm glad we can say this relatively early into the investigation. We had complete radio silence, if you remember Southport, so it's good to see that things have improved. It still took like 10 hours to release the name, but to be fair, it's an improvement. But realistically here, Starmer has exactly the same style of giving a speech like this when he gives a speech on increasing national insurance or something like that. He is very, very, very robotic, but the actual content, the words in the speech, are absolutely fine.
That attacked Jews because they are Jews, and attacked Britain because of our values.
I kind of get what he's saying there. It's a yes and no thing. They were attacked as Jews because they are Jews. Yes, that part's absolutely correct. Was this attack on British values? Indirectly, yes. Yes, it was. And it's yet again another rug pull for the people that think just having someone over here and giving them a British passport makes them British. On the very bright side of this, there is definitely an undertone of this man was not British, which does very much open the door to reviewing people who have been granted citizenship in the past. If, say, they're on the terrorist watch list, maybe investigate them, which is something I've never had a problem with in my life. You always get this meme of civic nationalists, and I'll be honest, it does not help with the mainstream, where ethno-nationalists seem to think that just because someone has a passport, it means that they're British, and you can never do anything to change the fact that they have a British passport. No, I've always thought that they've been handed out like candy, and I've always thought that there will probably need to come a time where these previous decisions need a review. And, well, look at what Reform are doing. What direction are they going in? Illegal migration, mass deportations. Dorkright were very happy to hear those magic words, but let's be realistic, it's just detail on stuff they've been saying the whole time anyway, they just used the magic words. Then you had indefinite leave to remain, a complete review of that, and a complete rescinding of that, along with it being retroactive. After this, they have the door wide open to then talk about British citizenship that has been given out. They probably already planned to do it, and I would not be surprised if they try and strike while the iron is hot early next week on this. You don't want to do it too early because it looks like you're ambulance chasing, but I would not be surprised if that was the direction of travel. And it would be an incredibly good one that once again will get national debate in all of the mainstream, with very little that they can actually do to argue against it, because how the hell do you justify this terrorist who did so in the name of, let's face it, a completely foreign land and culture? How do you justify him keeping his British passport? I have no idea.
But Britain is also a country where Jewish buildings, synagogues, even schools require round-the-clock protection, where dedicated specialist security is necessary because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. Today's horrific incident shows why.
Yeah, it's funny that we didn't need this 10 years ago, 20 years ago. This is a very recent phenomena. I wonder why. Anyway, you get the idea of the speech. We will do everything we can for the Jewish community, blah, blah, blah. It's absolutely terrible. Barely anything will change. That's just the result of this and the reality. Anyway, the Labour front bench appeared to head over to a synagogue for a Jewish service. That's fine. It's virtue singly, but whatever. I believe Kemi Badenoch did the same thing. I'm not going to particularly criticise them for this. It's a perfectly fine reaction, and I think a good thing to do. Shabana Mahmood, our Home Secretary, post-reshuffle, said, "I am horrified by the anti-Semitic terrorist attack at the synagogue on the holiest day of the Jewish calendar. The government has stepped up security at synagogues across the whole country, and we will do whatever it requires to keep our Jewish community safe. To those who seek to divide us, they will fail." As a result of this, Shabana Mahmood's, old protesting days, even when she was a front bencher, by the way, were brought up.
I'm just here, it's Saturday afternoon, a peaceful protest outside of a Sainsbury's store here in central Birmingham, and it's 3:30 and the store has actually just shut as a result of the peaceful protest. That's about 4.5 hours worth of business that Sainsbury's is losing for supporting goods from the Israeli settlements, which are illegal under international law.
That's enough of that. If you could not quite hear what she was saying there, effectively, she is very happy that a peaceful protest has successfully closed down a Sainsbury's shop because it was stocking Israeli goods. I had a look through and found that this was all the way back from 2014, and again is the seed from which this has all sprouted. We have had this sectarian politics for some time about a conflict that is the other side of Europe, and once it turned very nasty over there, we started having even more protests about it, to the point where the Labour Party recognised the Palestinian state, and well, what's happened as a result? Well, we'll get into all the protests we saw as a result of Jews being killed in Britain, not in favour of keeping the Jewish people safe or out of solidarity for them or anything like that, no. To remind people that this Gaza war is still going on, and they very much are on the side of the people who kill Jews. Simple as that. Am I saying Shabana Mahmood supports them? No, I'm saying she was a useful idiot a few years ago and could not see the inevitable consequence of her actions. And now she's in a tough place where she has to try and claim that we will not be divided, despite the fact that her actions have indirectly led to this. Anyway, Humza Yousaf came out to say this evil terrorist may claim to have been a Muslim. I mean, he was literally called jihad, which means struggle in Arabic, and usually is related to the Islamic faith, but his actions have nothing to do with Islam. Again, you can try and claim that the Westboro Baptist Church has nothing to do with Christianity, and that the Mormons have nothing to do with Christianity, though obviously they're neither really compare to this. But the reality is that they do, and I suppose this is Humza Yousaf attempting to say, I do not want to be put in the same category as this man whatsoever, which is obviously completely understandable, but it just comes across as a kind of not a Muslim problem. And unfortunately it is. It bears some responsibility, especially on Muslim leaders, to condemn this, which plenty do. I still remember after the Manchester attack there were plenty of Muslim imams who came out to do charity work to help the poor girls and their families who were grieving, and to help those who were in hospital. But as I say, it just comes across dismissive, and that's what people don't particularly like about Humza Yousaf. He's not a very good communicator on this. A religion that says to kill one innocent person is like killing the whole of humanity. Well, this is the problem, Humza. This guy didn't think Jews were innocent. Over the coming weeks and months, many will try to divide us. We must not let them prevail. Cue the Norm Macdonald tweet of the thing I'm most terrified of: if a nuclear warhead went off over New York by Muslim terrorists, what would happen to the Muslims, blah blah blah. Yeah, Humza Yousaf may have a point, but the way it comes across is just incredibly dismissive, and let's be fair, I think a lot of people are caring much more for Jews that have been stabbed, 2 of which died, than the Muslims who may or may not get more abuse as a result of this. And this, of course, was shared by the newsagents and other lefty political commentators. On the very same day there was a heinous act against Jews in Manchester, some boys saw already, entirely predictably, using it as a springboard from which to launch hatred against Muslims. It's a road to nowhere. I agree it's a waste of time. I agree it's happening. But again, it just feels like a complete virtue signal. It just does not compare to people being rammed into and stabbed. Doesn't mean don't talk about it, and I'm not necessarily saying that. But if you are gonna say this, at least quote tweet someone doing it and call them out, rather than just put this generic tweet out, because it just invites the Norm Macdonald tweet. Anyway, contributing editor to Navarra Media, Rivka Brown, said, "There is no way to divorce this attack from the loathing and oppression of minorities of all kinds, Muslims, trans, Jewish, disabled, that is spreading like wildfire in our society. It actually is quite easy, to be honest with you, because Islamists are rare in Britain, but they cause an awful lot of damage, and typically they really hate one of those groups. So to bring out the progressive stack in the year of our Lord 2025 is absolutely crazy, and once again I have to say, if you think Navarra's whole post-liberal, yeah, maybe the righties have a point shtick is in any way genuine, here is my definitive proof that you are falling for it and not going to make it." Anyway, on to what on-the-ground action is happening at the moment that the 3 people I just went through completely tolerate, by the way. So 2 Jewish people die, 2 more are stabbed and rammed and what have you by what the police are, well, what even the Prime Minister called terrorism, and what was highly likely Islamic terrorism. You'd expect people to come out in solidarity and have maybe a bit of a vigil or something like that. Well, this was Manchester Piccadilly, literally the same city where the stabbing took place. Yep, used it to keep pushing their pro-Gaza agenda. In the same city where just hours ago someone was stabbed. I'm sure you have protests similar to this, but probably not as big happening, sure. However, as is very much clear, they will never let a good tragedy go to waste. Even though this particular tragedy goes completely against their favour. This happened all over Britain, it seems, by the way. Here's scenes from Edinburgh. Yes, they were doing the same tactics they were doing when, well, Israel was attacked by Hamas, where they basically just cause a massive ruckus in train stations, causing massive issues for people just trying to get to and from work until, I guess, the Israeli state is completely abolished. But again, when do these flashpoints happen? They happen massively when Jews die. How is any of this seen as acceptable? This is tolerated, and it's behind a mask of the Palestinian struggle, I guess they'd call it. In reality, you know, this is a pattern now. It's a celebration. This is a carnival. Obviously, there were similar things happening in London. This is Liverpool Street Station. Again, more chance for the complete eradication of Israel straight after some Jews in Manchester who had absolutely nothing to do with Israel, beyond the fact that they share a religion, were killed and maimed. Then we move over, well, to Parliament Square. Whole bunch of pro-Gaza signs, whole bunch of Palestine flags, a big old homemade banner talking about how there were Zionist murders of UK civilians, which there were in the past, to be fair. However, that was 1 decade ago. And 2 does not excuse killing 2 people going to the synagogue who had nothing to do with that. And trying to further justify it effectively because, well, Zionists exist and Israel is winning a war. And I mean, in any other context, I probably wouldn't be downplaying how far Israel are going, but I'm not in a particular mood to be nuanced on this issue at the moment. And again, all of this is a celebration / excusing what happened in Manchester. That is a direct result of this, whether the people there mean it to be or not. And if you can look closely at the picture, I mean, I'm not being funny, but sorry to be a bit Jon Snow here, but it just looks like a sea of white people. I see a couple of black faces, I suppose, and other non-whites, but the point I'm trying to make here is that this is not just a one ethnicity issue, and I'm not saying that these people are intentionally justifying what happened in Manchester. A lot of these people are literally just herd animals. They're following a crowd. They just know, oh, people I know and like are very pro-Palestine. Oh, they've told me that this protest is going on. I'll go with them because what's happening in Palestine is horrible. And to some extent at this point, they may have a point. However, there's just no indication that they understand that the timing of this looks absolutely horrible. And believe it or not, if you celebrate a terrorist attack like this, guess what it does? It encourages more. Obviously. And it's a phenomenon that I just don't see why we can tolerate it anymore. I don't see how it's reasonable to. Because just listen to some of these chants. So these Gaza protesters were chanting Khyber Khyber Ya Yahud Jazi Muhammad Sufa Yaud, which according to Wikipedia translates roughly to Khyber Khyber, O Jews, the army of Muhammad will return, and it's an Arabic language rallying slogan referring to the Battle of Khyber of 628 CE AD, which began after Muhammad marched with a large Muslim army and besieged Khyber, an oasis in present-day Saudi Arabia that was home to an established Jewish community. Again, this is what they're chanting. They are happy to basically celebrate this and effectively call for more. Can we investigate these people? If they have British citizenship, take it off them. And if they have indefinite leave to remain, take that off them. Rescind all right for them to stay in the country and deport them, please. I will not trust that Labour will do anything about deportations and immigration unless something like that happens relatively swiftly. Because this is absolutely indefensible. If you are going to have a free target for deportation to prove you're serious about it, people chanting, literally chanting a rallying slogan, calling to fight Jews straight after some Jews have died, yeah, pretty cut and dry that they shouldn't be here. Anyway, these marches went into the night. Literally, an all-day celebration. I don't know how else to describe it. Again, intifada means rebellion or uprising, and it very rarely just means via peaceful means. But again, this is all in London, and it's once again a diverse set of people marching. In fact, during the intifada chant, you had a white woman chanting the loudest from the looks of it. Well, these are complete NPCs, and these are people that will basically be chanting pro-British slogans if all their friends were. But there is an absolutely massive police presence because this is an absolutely massive celebration of some Jews dying. And this is the only way that I can phrase it, because this flash mob of people coming out to protest Gaza, quote unquote, well, what was the flashpoint for it? Jews being stabbed. That's what the flashpoint was. So what else can I describe it as or link it to? And as I mentioned, this festival atmosphere kept going in throughout the night, with people even getting out drums to jump up and down, dance and sing, in what can only be described once again as a celebration. Honestly, that's enough of that. I'm fed up of seeing these people that have come out as a reaction to Jews being stabbed and killed to basically celebrate that and all this isn't intimidation. This is saying this will continue until our demands are met. We cannot tolerate that at all. And this mostly peaceful protest was very much a mostly peaceful protest. There were scenes of scuffles with the police.
It is getting a bit violent, Ian. I've just seen 3 territorial squad police vans filled with officers just go onto Whitehall. Basically, about sort of half an hour ago, the police cordon that was in place to try basically to control some of the protesters and to stop violence breaking out, that cordon was broken.
Yeah, I'm not going to paint the entire celebration as a violent celebration. Many people have been there just to scream and shout. The police came out with a statement on this saying that while there was a protest organised by the Global Movement for Gaza that took place in Whitehall this evening, officers imposed a Public Order Act condition on the protest to keep roads open and prevent serious disruption, as is perfectly reasonable for protests like this, and regrettably a significant number of those present were intent on breaching the conditions, leading to clashes with officers who moved in to enforce them. Well, they're emboldened. Jews have just been killed, you let them celebrate that, why wouldn't they push their luck? 40 people were arrested, 6 of those arrested were for assaults on police officers, while the majority were for breaching conditions. Fine. Protests now dispersed and Whitehall returned to normal. Officers remain in the area to deal with any further incidents. The other thing is that for the last 2 years, when we have seen images of protesters pushing their luck with the police, they don't do much. They seem to let an awful lot go, so it's no surprise that they keep pushing their luck this way, but it's good to see that many arrests were made, because it looks like there should have been many arrests. Anyway, Shabana Mahmood also had some comments this morning on Times Radio, where she said that the protest last night was disgraceful, yes they were, and fundamentally un-British. So it looks like we actually do have a limit to British values of tolerance here. She calls protesters to step back from planned marches in coming days, urging them to show some love and solidarity with the British Jewish community in the wake of the Manchester terror attack. They're not doing that. That's not going to happen. You're going to see a massive march tomorrow on Saturday. Because, what makes these flashpoints? The death of Jews. I'm sorry, what other conclusion can I come to? She told Times Radio, I think the behaviour we saw last night was fundamentally un-British, and I think it's disgraceful, and I will call on everyone who is considering the protest the next day or two to take a step back and show some humanity and love towards the community that is grieving, and I think that's the right thing to do. I would agree with her, but they're not going to listen. And I think to finish off this video, I need to make one thing very clear. Jihad's family fundamentally condemn what happened. Because in the family statement from Farah al-Shami, the news from Manchester regarding the terrorist attack targeting a Jewish synagogue has been a profound shock to us all. The al-Shami family in the UK and abroad strongly condemn this heinous act, which targeted peaceful, innocent civilians. We fully distance ourselves from the attack and express our deep shock and sorrow over what has happened. Our hearts and thoughts are with victims and their family, and we pray for their strength and comfort. We kindly request that all media outlets respect the family's privacy during this very difficult time and refrain from using this tragic event in any context that does not reflect the truth. May God have mercy on the innocent victims, and we pray for a safe recovery of the injured. Now, I'm taking them at their word here. They could be lying, but I highly doubt it. But this is where investigations need to occur. Who was involved in this terrorist attack? We know 2 30-year-old men and a 60-year-old woman were involved. Who were they if not part of the al-Shami family? I would obviously like answers to that. Is it a case of Jihad separated from the family and didn't have too much contact with them? Or were there things he was doing that maybe they should have suspected and therefore they should have let counter-terrorist police know, prevent or something like that? I don't know, but all this stuff needs to be investigated. But I trust them at their word that they completely condemn this attack. This seems to be an individual attack committed by 4, possibly more people, but not one that involves the whole family. I want to make this very clear because even at this time we still need to treat people as individuals. That is how we work, and that is how we should always work. And that's why I like Reform's process of do everything on a case-by-case basis, remove all indefinite leave to remain, say, and have them reapply. And so then they can go through case-by-case and then reject or accept people based on the tougher criteria. And perhaps the same thing could happen with citizenship, where every single citizenship that was given out over the past 30 years, say, is reviewed, and if, say, any of them are on a terror watch list or something like that, or have been referred to prevent, maybe that could be enough to revoke said citizenship. Because I don't want people like Jihad being considered a countryman. Even the Prime Minister is saying that he was fundamentally un-British and attacked British values, as he says. So even by their standards he was not British, yet he still has the passport. So we will see what happens in the coming week. Because once again, this is going to be a big story that does stick in the news, and I expect a lot of people to be talking about, and debates will no doubt come out of the ashes yet again. But what is going to be a very uncomfortable point for an awful lot of people, especially in the mainstream, has to be made here. Well, this man, Jihad, was in the country for 20 years. And after 20 years, he decided to commit a terrorist attack against some Jews in a suspected suicide vest, though from early reports I believe it was an unviable suicide vest, meaning that it was probably fake. And this is why I want the reviews to go back, well, at least 20 years in this case, because quite clearly, getting citizenship 20 years ago, that couldn't even successfully bring about an integrated member into the society. Even Keir Starmer agreed with that. So at this point, indefinite leave to remain, that's a whole nother kettle of fish that Reform are absolutely right to get rid of. When it comes to British citizenship, they're absolutely right to make that harder too. So it's a point that's going to have to be wrestled by the mainstream, and I have no doubt in my mind that Reform are going to force them to reckon with it, because they can't shut up about them, because they're winning the next general election with the trends we currently have. And my God, if they play this right, they're going to be guaranteed it. So I suppose that's a bit of a white pill throughout all this. This problem will be being addressed. Right, with that, that's everything I had for you for today. So if you enjoy what I do, please do subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment. You can also become a channel member or leave super chats and super thanks on any video or stream that I do. In terms of streaming, tomorrow it's Laughing at the Guardian with some Warmin. Next Tuesday it is Tosh News. And I think gaming streams will be swapped to Wednesday, so hopefully I will actually start a playthrough of Life is Strange. With that, that's everything I had for you for today though, so once again thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.